Alright, so in this video, I'll go over everything I learned in the last week about Warpath and about Spin to Win in general. We'll go over the upsides and downsides, build mechanics, skill rotation, skill specs, passives, items and blessing. I'm also going to tell you how you actually craft or find the items, or in case the items that I have. Obviously, you have to be a little bit more flexible, but yeah. Then about leveling and also at the end filters. Starting with the upsides and downsides, this is probably the coziest build I've ever played in last Epoch. This is how your build is going to look like. I'm currently pressing one button, not even move, just the cyclone button, because it already moves you in the direction of the cursor and you basically just go. Your AoE gets bigger and bigger, as you can see right here. Over time, we'll talk about that. You have echoes that also clear behind you. It's just great. It has great clear speed. It has good defenses. As you can see right here, while I'm channeling, I'm on 78% armor. Pretty good stuff right there. I'm capped on resistances. I have 4.3k life, right? A lot of other small stuff on the Void Knight tree, like the conversion back there, on Abyssal Fluctuation. And it has good boss damage. It's a solid build. It is perfectly fine for kind of the range on 1000 corruption up to 1300, maybe a little bit higher if you min-max it. However, the one downside is it's hardly uber Aberoth viable. For that, I would highly recommend a Raising Strike. Now, Raising Strike also kind of scales mana, even a little bit higher. So a lot of the gear will actually overlap. If you, for example, look at Volka's guide on max roll, other than the weapon, which is Dark World Splitter, the only difference you'll see is Mercurial Solarons, and that's just because he's not going for the clear speed version. I could also use those, but I'm using Dark Strides. So in general, something you can for sure do is kind of have like one or two items off, spec into a Raising Strike, try Uber Aberoth. I know a lot of people who obviously try for hours and hours, even on like the best builds. It is almost impossible, but you can do it. Unless you're snapshotting or whatever, but let's say, yeah, you can do that and then get maybe your Haste Relic or whatever, and then go back to clear speed with Warpath. But yeah, the build is just not very good in 5-minute plus encounters, and that's for a very distinct reason. And we'll cover that during build mechanics. So this build revolves around Warrior's Fury. So the longer you channel Warpath, the bigger it will get and the more damage it will do, but also the more mana it will consume. So if you can see, for example, right here, you will see in my mana bar, so first up, Warpath gets bigger, right? Does more and more damage. You can see it from the ticks, but my mana is going down, right? But in down here, you will see these Void Essences. I have 3 right now. And what will happen is once I drop to 0 mana, it will pop me back up to 30. In this case, there was like a bug. This sometimes happens if it's not perfectly lined up, but usually you would keep spinning. So it will go to 0 again, and I'm most likely going to go back up. Yep, I go back up and it doesn't interrupt me. So how does this work? More AoE, more damage per second, drains more and more. Devouring Orb generates you Void Essences. So right here you can see you have a chance to gain a Void Essence when Devouring Orb expires. Now, this is a little bit of RNG because you have Sightless Star here, which when it triggers, you have a chance to consume. It's like a 32% chance. So if you get unlucky a few times in a row, it can actually happen that it caps you. But then it will like cap me for 0.5 seconds and then it will go back up in mana. It's not perfect, but it's what we got and it's very efficient. And then what we have with Void Vel is this one will consume the Void Essences to refund mana. So you go to 0 mana, you have 3 Void Essences. It's going to consume those Void Essences, kick you back up, and then you have 3 seconds to regain those Void Essences. Now, this is not the perfect scenario because at a boss, usually, so you have like chance on kill and chance on hit to get those Void Essences. So the more monsters are around, the more ads are around, the more consistent this will obviously be. And you saw in this showcase already why this build is not great at long encounters. It is because it's inconsistent damage, right? Now, obviously, over a long period of time, if we can charge for like 30 seconds before we go to 0, that still means on average, you're getting buffed from like 15, right? You go from 0 to 30, somewhere around 15, 16. But in a long fight, you sometimes have to pick your battle, right? You have to know exactly when to apply the damage. Whenever the enemy has a downtime, you probably don't want to do damage. So it's a little bit awkward in that. The only fights where I've really found this to be awkward is Uber Aberoth. Normal Aberoth is very easy. And the encounter with the 10 Harpies in a row, but only on very high corruption. So I've done that on like 700, 800 corruption, but on like 1000 plus, it's a little bit harsh. Now, just so we're not only yapping for like half an hour or so, I'm gonna quickly show you a shrine map right here. I'm actually gonna start with this. So yeah, Warpath plays obviously really, really well. I'm gonna show you So if you're farming shrines, which a lot of people are doing right now, you just go in and you just keep spinning. Good damage. Nothing's really going to ever stop you. I think this should be 1,000 corruption. I really hope this isn't anything lower. Yeah, it looks like 1,000. Yeah, maybe a little bit. Okay. So pretty good. I don't think I changed anything. Yep. So you just waltz through. The nice thing is, once you get enough damage that you're actually just one-shotting rares while going through it. At the start, when you don't have enough damage, you just kind of have to like improvise a little bit. But yeah, do note that your copies behind you often finish off enemies, so you don't necessarily have to linger there. As you can see behind here, the copies will spawn on top of the enemies. So very often what's going to happen is you're not going to finish the rares completely, but then they will still die behind you, which is obviously very, very nice. For Shrine Boots here, I'm just not going to loot for a little bit. Glyph of Envy, I'm definitely looting. So yeah, this is kind of how it's going to look like. And pretty straightforward. I don't think I have to show you more. It's big AoE. Now, this is a thing where the more mana you're going to have, the bigger your AoE will get at the end. Because it ramps up over time, right? It is what it is. But yeah, as you can see right here, there's also a little bit of RNG involved. Sometimes if there's no mobs nearby or no rares to hit, you don't really get enough Void Essences. It's a little bit of a lottery. But yeah, there's like these like small awkward moments where you might run out of mana. But in general, it's not that big of a deal. As you can see here, I have 99% reduced crit. If you were only going for blind, there were already multiple ranged mobs that could have one-shot me, so I would personally not 100% just rely on that. Also, don't remember to travel, right? You don't just want to stand on top of the enemy, and that is because of how the echo works. If you're not constantly moving, for example, you'll see me on bosses kind of do this. You actually want to move a lot, right? Because you want to hit the enemy pretty straight up. Otherwise, you're not going to echo. Because of how Warpath is voided, it tells you right here, it can only echo if you've moved at least 4 meters in the last 2 seconds. On that note, if you're using a needle, you might be under the impression that you should stay a little bit away from the enemy once you have the AoE, because it says melee crit multi per meter from the target. That is true technically. I've found it still to be way more damage to be on top of the enemy so that the copy actually spawns on top of the enemy, because it will apply extra armor shred. It is another damage multiplier. It's basically another U. So I have not found it to be worth to stay away from the enemy, because then your copies will not touch the boss. Now then let's talk about skill rotation. It is very easy. So your Devouring Orb instantly casts. You don't have to do anything. Your Symbols of Hope instantly cast. You don't have to do anything. And Anomaly, you have Spect, and it is instant. You can cast it while you're spinning, so it doesn't get you out of the Warpathing, right? Like out of stacking. Because as you can see right here, if I stack and I go AoE, 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 it gets bigger and bigger, and then I reset, I'm back to 0, right? So you never want that to happen. So with Anomaly, for example, you have this node right here, Borrowed Time, instant cast. All the other stuff is already instant cast, which also means it's a very cozy build to play. I really only press Anomaly in certain situations. You don't want to press it too much, because it does also cost mana, so it can screw a little bit with your cooldowns and with you going to 0. I have some Aberoth gameplay in the background, but what I wanted to say when it comes to bossing is, once again, you don't really need to do much. You press your Anomaly whenever it's up, but one important thing is I would hold down your mouse button while you're spinning at bosses, simply because this small stutter whenever you run out of mana is not really noticeable while mapping, but while bossing, if something like flies at you, you obviously want to be able to run out of it, and you don't want to be stuck in a certain weird situation. Same is true for probably Orobis fights or something, but this just means that when you stutter, your left mouse takes over, or whatever you have on move takes over, and you're still moving, right? You're not just standing there. As for skill specialization, you can see that I have Abyssal Echoes specialized. It gets auto-procced by Warpath, which means you don't need to have it on your bar. Lunge is what you want on your bar. This, I only press it like once or twice in the map. Let's say, here's the portal, I get into the map, initiate to the first pack. That is literally what I do, because it does interrupt your spin, so you lose your stacks, which is obviously not very good. So yeah, Lunge is just there because you just have it. Everything else, in order to work, needs to be on your bar. Devouring Orb and Symbols of Hope are the biggest things here. They do auto-proc, but they will not proc if you don't have them there, right? They just disappear. Okay, so in terms of skill specs, most important, obviously, our main skill, Warpath. Warrior's Fury only take 1 point in this. There's no real advantage other than maybe a little bit of burst damage, but yeah, there's just really no reason. You can play around with it if you want to. In terms of levels, otherwise, I actually don't have a plus for chest. So I only have 22 points with a +2 on Nihilist. So I personally wouldn't recommend a +4 because percentage health is insane. Obviously, if you can get a +2 and tier 7 percentage health, that is great. But in general, I don't think after level 22, there's much to do with my points. In fact, one of my points is kind of meh. It's the Battlemaster's Blade, which is additive with the Warrior's Fury, so it does almost nothing. And then I'm also maxing out Void Spiral. The effectiveness of points really goes down at a certain point. So we go full movement speed, 30%, obviously. We go Warrior's Fury, 1 point. Then Void Spiral. First up, you will only go 2 points into this. These are the last points you fill up. You go Echo Knight. This one makes it so your Warpath can actually echo, which is the ability of your Void Knight. You get some global void damage. Doesn't really matter. This one just converts and gives you Time Rod chance. And here it is. Maw of the Deep, 15% hit damage taken on enemies per Time Rod. Time Rod stacks 12 times. That's a total of 180% more damage. It's ridiculous. And then you're also proccing Abyssal Echoes, which we're going to go into a little bit. That also gives you extra buffs. Up here, we go for AoE, then we fill out Whirling Steel completely. This is 40% more damage, double since we have a two-hander. And then the last point is Battlemaster's Blade, but this one's pretty bad. If you're using a Clotho's Needle, which is the best damage, not speed, but damage version of the build, then you would want to spec into 5 points of Cyclone of War. So you would take some of the flat damage out of here, take out Battlemaster's Blade, maybe go for a +2 on the chest alongside percentage health, and then you get 10 base crit. But for what we're running, which is Maw, for Axe, melee health leech is not worth points. Now we have Symbols of Hope. These auto-cast, they give you buffs. It's basically what they do. You have 4 of them in total with Tetragram. Never actually press your Symbols of Hope. This is a bait because once you press it, all the buffs are gone. Not good. Never press it. Don't do it. It's just a passive buff, right? What you get is a ton of increased damage right here. You get up to 80% crit with 4 of them. Very strong. You go up, you grab the fire damage per stack, and then you convert it into void. You also get some increased void damage. Everything else, the block is kind of fine. You could probably also take one of the points in block and maybe take it in empowering symbols. Overall, it doesn't really matter. If you have a Clotho's Needle, though, you definitely want that block because then you're converting the block into parry chance. Anomaly, the most important one, is you have to take 4 points in the mission to get to borrowed time. This will screw up your cooldown, but it makes it instant cast, which means it doesn't interrupt your Warpath. Super important, otherwise you're always going to stutter. Don't do that. You have immediacy. You need this for it to work. The best notes here are Mark of Rod, which give you 50% increased damage taken to enemies that were present. And it is, yeah, it's just a great multiplier. You press it whenever you have it up. Then you go over there, increased bubble duration. You really want the Time Lord. This means so it stays on you while you're spinning. It isn't just stationary. You need this. And then up top, if you have the 2 points from Nihilist, you either go into attack speed, or if you need it to crit cap, you also decimation. Then we have Abyssal Echoes. You go right side through these nodes, basically just to get to Shrieking Echoes, plus 2 additional echo costs. Then you have Rippling Corrosion. You get Armor Shred stacks. We still want another source of Armor Shred, which are going to be on our gloves. And then we get this buff, Embrace the Darkness. More damage versus blinded enemies, which we're going to have on the passive tree. You get attack speed, and then also a little bit of Time Rod chance. In general, nice little addition. It's not huge, but it's nice to have. And then we have Devouring Orbs, which provide you the Void Essences. It is also instant cast, once again, and you have a chance to only consume half your cooldown and half your mana cost. Quite nice. This one is important because it makes it so Devouring Orbs actually have an impact, which helps you with the Void Res Shred up here. I don't actually know if it works without it, but I'm pretty sure you need it. And other than that, the biggest draw of Devouring Orb, though, is Void Adept. You get more global void damage, which counts for everything, and you get increased mana regen. So as you can see right here, with 5, you're going to deal a ton more damage. And yeah, we don't have the 90 vitality, so unfortunately, we don't get more of it. But yeah, these are the points that make the build. In terms of passive tree, we start at the Sentinel. We go 8 into Juggernaut. I only have 6 into Fearless, but you can definitely jumble these around if you want more life. If you don't actually need the resistance, can definitely do that. 5 points into Armor Clad is non-negotiable, and 1 point into Stalwart just because I can. We can actually go for Blade Master, and the reason is that the points in Void Knight are just too valuable. Don't forget that every point spent in Void Knight gives you 1 crit multi, so we really want to focus as much as possible. So putting in 10 more points and then 5 more points into Blade Master is just out of the question. We have to go into the Pally tree though to get Symbols of Hope at level 15. We do that by taking Defiance, 5 points here. You can definitely max this out if you need the Ellie Res. For me, it kind of just perfectly worked out. Then we go into Valor, which is really just there for the health, and then we need a little bit of blind chance. One thing I want to say here is do not simply only rely on blind for crit. If you don't know, blinded enemies can't crit, but that is not an excuse in this build. You're going to get absolutely one shot in endgame, and I've heard this like line a lot where people are, oh, I'm sure blind is enough. No, it wasn't for me. I don't know how you play this build. Maybe on builds that are very ranged that works, but you will get off-screened by some necrotic dude and you're going to regret it. You still want to get the 100% reduced crit damage or as close as possible, or 100% crit avoid, whatever you want. We'll go into that in gearing. And then we have Void Knight, which is our mastery. It gives 1% more melee void damage per 3 vitality. We can't really make too much use of that, unfortunately, but I mean, yeah, if you have a little bit of vitality, it's not the worst. And then your melee attacks, throwing attacks, and void spells have a chance to copy. So that is what you've seen earlier with the copies that kind of spawn. Very important, once again, is you actually want to move to get those copies. Talking about the tree itself, though, I have 5 points in Abyssal Endurance. You can definitely fill this up more if you want to, if you need more void and physical resistance. This is especially important if you're using a Solomon's right here, Solaron, sorry. And you get that minus 75% physical res, then you're going to need all the help you can get. This is the damage setup, not the movement speed setup that we're using. Other than that, 5 points in Sorrow and Steel to get the extra 25% AoE, and it's just a pretty decent node in general. Void Corruption is the most important node. It gives you 1% crit multi per allocated nodes. With 78, that's 78 crit multi. Probably one of the biggest reasons to go Void Knight in general. Then we have some low priority mods, but still we have the Devouring Blade, which is just there to get to World Eater. This gives you melee Leech. Technically, you can leave this out if you have Leech somewhere else or if you just spec the points, but the Leech rate is also nice to have. However, on a build with Apathy Small, I can definitely see how you would replace it and just maybe get a little bit of Leech from the Warpath tree right here, right? That's kind of up to you. We then have 5 points in Doom Knight. This is the last points I put in. You can also put it in Dark Maw. Dark Maw is very good if you have very little percentage health. We already are quite min-maxed when it comes to that, but you can kind of play around with that. After we have those points, let's get into the nitty-gritty. We get Woe, which gives you Void Pen, Frailty, Slow Chance. Frailty Chance is extremely good. It makes it so enemies deal reduced damage. You go 5 points into Singular Purpose, just overall grant node, more damage, all the good stuff. Don't forget to go for Void Dwell. This does not work before you have Void Dwell. Otherwise, once you drop to 0, you are at 0, and it's very awkward. I actually have 2 points in Essence of the End. This could just be superstition, but I feel like 1 point and 2 points, there is a little bit of a difference with Void Essence Sustain, but you can play around with this. I've seen people who have even 3-4 points just to make it a little bit more consistent, but it is a little bit weird. Eternal Form, honestly, just there for the health efficiency. You just want to scale as much health as you possibly can. We go 4 points into Echoing Strikes. This one is just so we get the Time Rod chance, just so the more damage on the Warpath is a little bit more consistent. We go for Time Legion, extra attack speed, Echo Chance. You do not want to go Avatar of the Regret. The 10% increased mana cost is not worth it. Do not take that. We are maxing out Dread Form because this version is all about move speed. You do not have to put 10 points in here. Put at least 5 points to get the bonus on the bottom, but you can also put this into Dark Maw if you really want to, but I mean, move speed is move speed. Then we have Mortal Cleave, extra base crit, always great, especially if you're the X version. And then Abyssal Fluctuation, this one just, I don't know, you take a lot less void damage, and LE damage taken as void damage means you get the less void damage taken. It also means you get the less void damage taken from Abyssal Endurance. Next up, let's talk about gear. I'll first go over everything I have, gear, blessings, and whatnot, and then I'll go over how you can actually achieve this. Apathy's Maw is my choice because I'm using Dark Strides. This Clear Speed version is all about Dark Strides. 0.2% increased movement speed per added melee void damage. If you look at my move speed right now, I get from 145 to 48. So these boots almost give me 100% move speed. Note that this is not just added damage, it's added melee void damage. It has to exactly say that. So for example, on a needle, it says down here plus 90 melee damage. That is adaptive damage, just like the one in the implicit, but that does not work. It does not count. For example, if I put needle on, you can see I go down to 106%. It's a big deal. Now, if you have a needle with tier 7 implicit melee void damage, I think it is actually better than an Apathy's Maw, all things considered. You're still going to lose like 15 move speed or something, but then you do a lot more damage. So I would highly consider that if you have it. But even then, it's kind of close. And if you're farming 1,000 corruption and you have really good gear, the only thing hindering your currency per hour is getting more move speed. So at that point, what's more valuable than getting more movement speed? Nothing. Also, move speed is a fun multiplier, and I just played a week of Path of Exile 2, so sue me. However, Apathy's Maw gets carried by its LP. If you don't have base crit, you are not going to crit. You need at least, I would say, tier 6 melee crit in the implicit, and then at least tier 5 void melee damage. So what I slammed on this, I actually made a copy of it just in case it failed, is I slapped a copy of this on. I made these with Havoc runes right here, and I basically made it into tier 6, tier 7. The other way around would have been a little bit better. I would have gotten even more movement speed, but it is close to perfect. Those are the mods you want, and then you also need to get lucky. So do note that you want melee void and melee crit. Do not use apathies if you only have 1 LP. In that case, I would just farm some needles and do it that way. More on that in a second. Then you want Titan Heart. You really want that tier 7 increased health. So when it comes to corruptions of 1,000, or even if you want to farm beyond, it obviously has diminishing returns, but all that's really going to happen is your damage is going to be fine, but you need more health and health, right? You just can't get one shot. If I would be running around, for example, on 3.5k life, the difference would be like insane. It is a huge, huge difference. So you can see right here, if I take this body armor off, like, yeah. Titan Heart with percentage health. The second one, GG, would be +2 to Warpath, but it is what it is. The reduced bonus damage to crits did work out. I will highly recommend at this point that you get up to or as close to 100% reduced bonus damage taken from crits. Blind is nice to have, but it's not always up, and ranged mobs are going to decimate you. On helmet, this I just hit today, a Leonine helmet that has up to 85% implicit reduced bonus damage from crit. Also, look at that armor value. Normal helmets have like 100 to 200. It's insane. Leonine great helmets. And the most important mod here is the reduced channel cost. Oh boy, the difference between a tier 5 there and a tier 7 is huge. And you might say, pal, if mana cost is that important, why don't you take Unchained? With the mana cost going higher and higher, going up to like 40, 50, percentage minus reduction is just so much better than the flat. Shattered Chains, best case scenario, you would have percentage health and hybrid health as well. And 2 LP is not that hard to get. Nihilus, 1 LP is super important to get that mana roll. Without the mana roll, I would not be using it. Other than that, make sure it doesn't have like anything reduced really. +2 to all skills is obviously super nice. 4 rings, this one's a little bit more interesting. Flames of Midnight. So this one makes it so you can't evade, but you get 17 Void Pen, and you also get Swiftness, which is 20% move speed, and move speed equals good. Then we have Quicksilver Coil, which I'm using for the haste. It's a good point to talk about Doom. So Doom is a debuff on enemies that makes them take increased damage from, I think, Void? No, just melee in general, yeah. So they take 4% more, so in total they take 16% more damage. And it's also important because the belt works with it. 4% more melee damage per stack of Doom, so that's another 20% more. I get it from the Apathy's Maw, but if you don't have that and you're using Sword, you really need a Siphon of Anguish. In that case, you would probably cut the Flames of Midnight because 30 move speed is better than 20. But once again, if you have the Relic, you don't need to do that, and then you can go full ham. And yeah, you'll get haste, and you still get to use Siphon of Anguish, which can also roll with up to 8% move speed. Gloves-wise, Eternal Gauntlets are incredible with as much mana as you possibly can. I have a tier 7 roll here. It's not perfectly divined. I might divine it in the future. Melee attack speed, either that or strength, I think is also quite fine. And then hybrid health would be GG, and you need this shred armor. The shred armor from the Abyssal Echoes is not enough. I know it sounds nice, but armor shred is OP, and since it's not gonna be worth... Okay, if you got a 2 LP Nihilus and you got armor shred and mana, you're not gonna need it, but let's not dream too much. So hybrid health here would be really nice. The armor mitigation also applies to damage over time, is what really tears us apart. On Darkstride, you want the 30% movement speed, obviously, and then either hybrid health or strength, whatever you can get. For Relic, Anchor of Oblivion, incredibly solid. GG, once again, is the Shattered Worlds from Uber Aberoth. I guess to add as well from Uber Aberoth, if you're dropping Immortal Vices, those are also GG. but you will have to play around with this because if you don't get mana and armor shred, you can't really miss either of those. And getting 2 LP on that and hitting them exactly, you're going to have to kill Uberath probably multiple times. For idols, the big idols are going to be increased echo damage when a skill echoes, or melee void damage, or armor, or a combination of those. Armor is probably the worst, especially at this point. But as for enchants, movement speed is king. If you get more movement speed, even better. You can get, I think, up to 4. This should be, yeah, this is a tier 6. You can get up to 4% per, so I'm still missing a little bit there. The perfect idol for the 1x1s would be this one. Mana regen, health, mana hybrid. The mana goes up to, I think, 10 here. So in a perfect scenario, you could get 22 flat mana from one idol, which I do not have. I'm still missing, like, if I had all of those perfectly, I would have like 800 mana, but I don't. Otherwise, you can like fix your res, you can do stuff like that. Down here, I'm fixing my poison res while also getting some void pen. As you can see, best case scenario would be, unfortunately, didn't get the poison res on. Oh yeah, I would have poison res here, for example, if I had a 2 LP Flames of Midnight, which is not that hard to farm up, right? So you can kind of play around with that. But yeah, otherwise, just all the flat mana you can get. As for the combat relevant blessings, Grand Light of the Moon, super important, as much mana as possible. Grand Resolve of Grail is honestly like give or take. You can also go for armor here. The only reason I'm actually doing it is because even if I grab the points from Void Knight here, I'm off by a little bit. But you can definitely adjust this if you want to. You can put more points here. For example, take it away from Doom Knight. For me personally, the 5% more armor was still better, because do note that you already get a ton of increased armor from strength, right? It's 4% per point, but knock yourselves out. Grand Patience of Hair Care is incredible. Armor while channeling. As you can see right here, without channeling, I am at 72 and I go to 78, which is quite a big increase, but this one's also a little bit flexible. Not too flexible is the All-Res Blessing. Trust me, this is going to make your life a lot easier. You're gearing a lot easier. Crit Multi is a must-have here, and I think that's about that. Next up, let's talk where you actually get your items. Starting with Apathy's mod, this one drops from Shade of Oribus, and it's quite easy to get 2 LP. If you get a 0 LP, you can, as always, put them in a Nemesis egg and hope for a 2 LP. Should be quite achievable as soon as possible, as high void melee damage as you can. Do note that same thing goes for Shattered Chains. Although Shattered Chains getting 2 LP is a little bit harder, so you might settle with just 1 LP for a while. Percentage health or hybrid health are your best bets there. Otherwise, not much to say. If you're using a Clotho's Needle or you want to go for that perfect Clotho's Needle, the way you farm them is with Woven Echoes, and that is the Lost Wood Folly right here. If you're doing Shrine Strat, you're going to do those anyways. But one of the Fate Weavers is called Clotho, and he has a, I don't know, 45 or more % chance to drop that sword. And what you do with these Weaver's Will items is you don't actually have to equip them, right? You go here and you use all the Rune of Weavings that you have found, and then you just weave away, see what happens. This one's trash. All right, next, and so on. Titan's Heart is a global drop. Moving forward here, whenever I say global drop, that means in Circle of Fortune, you're going to have to farm them with targeted prophecies, or if you're in Merchant Guild, you're going to buy it. This one is achievable with 2 LP. Do note, though, that every percentage health here matters. This is the only roll that matters. So, for example, if you only had 30% health here, and then you slam on a tier 7 percentage health, that's actually only like having a tier 6. So make sure that you have like 38 or 40%. And if you can, a perfect chest would have tier 7 health and then tier 5 or higher plus to Warpath levels, and the rest is kind of like resistances, or like you see right here, the reduced bonus damage from crits. However, let's say you don't hit the reduced bonus damage from crits and you have a Leonine Great Helmet that, for example, is 80% or so, you can also take Patient Doom from the passive tree and fill up the rest point by point. Quicksilver Coil, super easy to get. LP 2 is super duper easy. What you really want to hunt for in endgame is a 3 LP. I've personally found a few of them, but they have never had good implicit move speed. I found one with 3 and one with 4%, and move speed is king, right? That's why we're using these. So melee attack speed is nice, obviously. The chance to gain haste on hit, usually you're going to be fine. Maybe don't want it to be like 10%, then it's a little bit inconsistent, but make sure that the implicit movement speed is up to par. Here you want, between those 2 rings, you only really want 1 crit roll, and otherwise just as much health as you possibly can, and then stuff like Poison Res, Necrotic Res, Fizz Res, anything you need to fill up. Strength is also fine. Same goes for Flames of Midnight. So Flames of Midnight drop from a Harbinger. Which one was it again? Flames of Midnight from the Spirits of Fire timeline. So that is the one up here, the level 91 right here. Yeah, you kill the Harvey over and over. At some point, you're going to get one. 2 LP is definitely doable. The Anchor of Oblivion is very common. It has 45% chance, and it drops in the Fall of the Empire timeline. If you're in COF, that's going to be way more. I basically drop it every single time, sometimes even 2. Fall of the Empire is, yeah, the level 81 right here. At the boss, normal drop. You don't even have to kill the Harvey if you don't want to. Both my rares have been made with Rune of Havocs. This is especially important for the helmet because it's going to be hard to get a natural tier 7 channel cost, let alone on a Leonine Great Helm base. It basically doesn't happen. In order to show you how a Havoc rune works, I'm going to quickly use this bricked helmet here. But what I did is I crafted on just tier 1 channel cost, right? You get those from Shattering and whatnot. Just craft on tier 1 channel cost. I gave up on this one. I think I threw like 4 or 5 on it because it has so low forging potential. So I'm never going to be able to actually finish the craft. But all you need is 1 tier 7 mod here. Nothing else matters. Then I craft on the channel cost, which you're not going to naturally have. And then you do Glyph of Havoc. And now what could happen is this tier 7 could go to the channel cost. We're going to see if it actually does happen. Boom. No, the tier 3 went there. But you get what I mean. You try this on a few Leonine helmets. If you don't have a Leonine helmet, the channel cost, getting that to tier 7 is more important. In fact, I had a different helmet before. I used the Leonine Great Helmet at the very end. Until then, you're just going to have to go by. Maybe you put more points into Patient Doom, or you get it from your boots, or maybe you just rely a little bit more on blind. My gloves are also made with Havocs, but gloves are a lot more forgiving, right? You don't exactly need this base type. The armor mitigation to damage over time is nice, but yeah, tier 7 mana is quite frequent. As for leveling, I personally went with a Hammer Throw variant. I'll link down below in the description the video where I talk about it in detail. But yeah, I used that until I think level 79 or so. You can definitely respec earlier if you know what you're doing. This was kind of on League Start. I didn't really know what was going on. But yeah, Hammer Throw is just super easy. If this is not your first character, just twink out of your mind. I don't know, like throw on 3 LP items, have like 1000 HP at level 1, whatever you want, you know what to do. Put on, I don't know, a crazy weapon that's going to carry you into endgame and just start spinning immediately with as much movement speed as possible. You can also use Tarek's Sentinel Leveling Guide, a very, very nice leveling setup. You're going to be OP at every point of the game. Just make sure you follow this early and intermediate setup. It is a little bit of respecking. For me personally, the Hammer Throw was just very comfy, but if you're fine with that, go for this build. Tarek knows what he's talking about. Question I get a lot is, what gear do you need to swap? Let's say you do start like I did with Hammer Throw, you watch the video, everything, yada, yada, yada. You need at least tier 5 reduced channel cost, which is, I think, 27 to 30-ish to kind of make the build feel at least decent. This will mean either you're going to work with Havoc idols or you're going to get a lucky drop, but most likely you're just going to target farm it with Prophecies on Circle of Fortune. Obviously, if you're on Merchant Skill, you'll have to buy it. But yeah, if you have Circle of Fortune, once again, target farm Exalted Helmets with Circle of Fortune. That's really all you can do. If you get Splinters randomly, make it so you shatter everything. I guess a good tip as well would be, so let's, for example, say you have channel cost right here at tier 3. You don't necessarily have to shatter it because you might only get like 1 or maybe even 0 of the shards. Do targeted Rune of Removal. Now, you can't do this because I already crafted on this helmet, but you can do this multiple times if it has forging potential. And if you hit channel cost with the Rune of Removal, it's going to always give you maximum shards. Just a little trick. But the second thing you need is either Apathy's Maw with a tier 7 base crit or Clotho's Needle. Nice thing about Clotho's Needle is you can get 5 to 8 base crit in the implicit, and then you can also get up to 10% base crit from Cyclone of Warp. However, on Apathy's Maw, that looks a lot different. You can't take that base crit node, and it doesn't have any innate base crit. So you need this 18% or I think 15 to 18% melee crit. Otherwise, you're just not going to crit. And you're going to have to, at the start, if you don't have 2 LP, have to not go for the melee void damage, which is going to cost you like, I don't know, 20% movement speed. But it really is what it is, even with Dark Strides. I don't even know if you should go for Dark Strides early, but I know a lot of you guys want to be zoomy. So I'm just telling you, if you go for Apathy's Maw, that's one thing. Once again, if you farm a Clotho's and you get high flat melee void, or I don't know, high melee crit multi, high melee attack speed, or even like the mana roll, you can try it out. You can also go for the Clotho's Needle for now. Do note that then you're going to be a lot slower. Talking about slower though, you need movement speed everywhere. So that means movement speed implicit on your boots, whatever you're running, go as high as you possibly can. You can also use Exile Boots. They have intrinsically 30%. You can use those for a while. Get a Quicksilver Coil for the haste. There's no real other way to get haste other than sacrificing your body armor, but once again, then you're going to be squishy as hell. And Flames of Midnight you can only use if you have Apathy's Maw, because you need the Doom from somewhere, and otherwise you're going to have to use Siphon of Anguish. If you're using a Siphon of Anguish, make sure it has up to max roll. It goes up to 8% move speed. Just trust me when I say every bit of movement speed matters on this build. It will make the build feel from okay to awkward to insane. In terms of filters, I have 4 here. I have the leveling filter, pretty self-explanatory. Then I have Endgame with Hammer and Warpath. This one is basically you came out of campaign, you're still on hammers, but you want to transition to Warpath, so you already want to see Warpath items. That's the filter for you. Then Endgame Warpath only is once you transitioned into Warpath, but it's pretty early for you. And then Uber Strict, only use this if you're already well into endgame, around about 85 to level 90, and you feel like you have most of your items. As for the filters themselves, I'll tell you straight up, as a creator, it is very hard because people will be complaining no matter what you do. It's too strict, it's not strict enough. Highly recommend you reading into this. There is a max roll guide that will explain everything to you. If you don't know, in Last Epoch, it's not like in Path of Exile. You import the filter, and then you see all the rules that the filter has here, and with the click of a button you can enable, disable stuff. You can add as much as you want. If you're dissatisfied with the filter, I totally get it. Everybody has a different filter. That is totally normal in Last Epoch. Read this guide on how you can change it yourself. It is so goddamn easy. It is not like Imperium. But yeah, that's about all I got for today. Hope you guys are enjoying the build, or maybe just learned a thing or two. I'm personally going to next up try a little bit of Sork, maybe a little bit of mana stacking. Sentinel is very strong this patch, so I'm not sure if it's going to feel all that good going from the strongest class to all the other stuff. But in total, super happy I went with Warpath. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and probably more Last Epoch still to come for like half a week or a week. But with that being said, since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.